Let's see. Welcome to day 7. We're gonna give it a moment here and make sure I'm live per normal. Live now, here we go. Welcome. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Let's check the other one. Facebook. So today is a fun day because it's implementing the basics that we covered in day 1 through 7 for this challenge of starting your business. And I really like this topic, right? Because it's kind of the thing, it's the magic part. It's the part no one really talks about. Like, why do some people get results and some people really want results but don't get them? What, right? Like, how do you actually get started? Or if you're already started, how do you get to the next level? It's kind of the part about having a struggle, right? Like, are we currently struggling in starting a business? Where do we want to be and where are we at? Sometimes people just haven't defined that very well, which is why that was the first thing we covered in day 1 of this challenge, right? What's the real big thing that really lights you up that you want to do that you're probably not doing? If you're like most people in the human race, you have probably told yourself that thing doesn't make money, that thing, but like whatever that is, as covered in day 1, that's why this is so important. That's why I referred back to it so much of the time, because you can't force yourself to be excited, right? You can't make that happen. And what we'll be going over today is kind of shows you more why that's so effective for people. So if you're new to the 7-day challenge, I'm just putting the link in. All the recordings and everything is in there. Here we go. My first day. Hi, Robert. I'm driving. I will not take it personally. Please do not respond. You're welcome to listen. Hi, JJ. Hi, Bubble Buster. Hi, Sis Irie and Greg. Awesome to see you again. Robert, if you don't enjoy the struggle in the challenge, you'll never make it anyway as part of the allure. Well, yeah, that is a big mentality out there. We'll be going deeper into that. Hi, DK. Welcome all. Okay, yeah, do say hello if you're here, and let me know what's up if you're new. Yes, Facebook, yes, everyone. I'm in this software that does both Facebook and YouTube, but I know most of my people are here on YouTube. So, okay. So yeah, it's a what we're going to talk about today is also kind of like updating a little bit of a more specific plan. This is really a broad view, right? You could have any type of business. We're talking about this really broadly. But I think that this is the starting point, no matter where you're at, whether you have a successful business and you're trying to do something else, or you're just struggling to get started, or you have something that you don't like and you want to make something you do like, or you're just desperate for money and you're looking for a revenue stream. Regardless of any of those common scenarios, having the bigger picture analysis is how you then make decisions about more specific things. So if you got the email I sent out about today, there's all sorts of trainings out there, and someone asked the last training, and people will often ask me like, hey, what do you think of this business training about blah, blah, blah? And it's something very specific. People are like, make money making ads online, make money, on Amazon online, make money being a coach, make money doing this, make money doing that. And those programs will walk you through a very specific journey that the person had who figured out how to make money in that way. And they tell you to do it exactly as they did it. And as I explained, I don't think that that's a very realistic way unless you're sure that that route is the route you want to take. Otherwise, of course, there's a lot of information to learn, right? Like if you decide like, I want to start an online business and you go back to whatever your core thing that you really are interested in, then on the other side of that, you're going to have to learn some technical stuff. So I'm not saying that you don't have to learn stuff. It's just that when someone sells you on like a process, they're not telling you the mechanics of what you're going to learn, right? And so that's really where there's a big disconnect. Another industry that's really good at this is multi-level marketing, right? So, it's bizarre to me how corrupt it is. I have a supplement company that I love, which technically I'm a seller of. I don't sell it, obviously. I just wanted to use it. But they don't even let people be customers. You're like, you have to be in on the scheme. And I thought it was remarkable how two people in particular, three really, who I had met that are in this company that genuinely believe that what they're doing isn't corrupt, even though they're selling people on a dream. You want to have income? You want to have a business? Well, we have the perfect thing for you. Never do they talk to you about how many people need to buy the products from you. What's the total amount of sales you need to have what type of income? Never does anyone go over any sort of numbers, right? How on earth is that a valid business? Thanks, Bubble Buster. I want to make a hobby into money. That is what I recommend if you haven't noticed. Definitely, and not necessarily a hobby. It could be something. Yeah, I'd love to hear where you guys are at as well. That's great. What's your hobby, Bubble Buster? Yeah. Certainly turning hobby into a passive income stream is a great idea because there tends to be lower pressure on it. So, okay, so we'll jump in here. So one of the first things I wanted to point out that I see, yes, pyramid schemes are lovely. So when you're getting started, what I often see happen, regardless of if you've been in business 20 years, you're trying to start, people jump in and they get to a certain point, right? So they are either trying to get started for years, and they're just trying to get started for years, and they just can't really get off the ground. Or they jump in with, like, let's say I see this a lot with contractor businesses. They'll jump in and it takes off. They're honest guys. They know their stuff. They get a good reputation. They build a business. They hire a crew. They get going, but they hit a certain level, right? Like everyone gets there really quick. Everyone just gets into their level quick, whether that's the 0 clients and 0 income, or whether that's, a few $100,000 and taking home whatever income. People get to that point really quick, and then they just stay there. And then they might work really hard to move somewhere else. And it's hard. It's hard to grow. It's hard to actually start. So it's like the same place, but people are at different, say, levels. And it has nothing to do with how much money they actually have from like a free point of view, like how much free money do I have to do whatever with, right? Because someone could be making a lot of money, but not actually have any discretionary funds available because it's already committed places. So money, the exact money position someone's in could be looked at this way too. I'm talking about it in a broader business sense. Like, you've been wanting to start a business, you just never really get anywhere. You just never find clients, right? Or like I said, people just get to that settling point really quickly. So that's what I call it, like a settling point, a plateau. You jump in, you get started, and you just settle there. And this happens to everyone. And then everyone tries to make something different happen. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and they might not get anywhere. Like, a lot of people just stay where they are at, and sometimes even kind of regress because they get so frustrated they're not moving forward. So what I'm going to talk about next is what I've learned is the cause of that and a solution for going forward, and just the type of work that it takes to really move forward and create something new. And ultimately, we'll talk about how you create a new plan and implement it. And it's, guess what, guys? I do not recommend it being a hard hustle thing that you hear people talking about online. I would actually argue that they're typically bullshit. They probably worked really hard for a long time, and they're correlating that with eventual success that did not actually come directly from working hard. Because, like I said, if you think about your own situation, and it can be hard if you just haven't gotten clients and you haven't gotten income, but if you do have a more successful business and you think back to the start, how quick did you get to where you are? Most people do not continue a progressive expansion continuously, because that takes really big personal change on a personal level. Thank you, Bo, for the nails. I'll come back to your questions in a second. And feel free to post questions as we go. I'm kind of jumping into what I'm going to cover today, so I'll kind of just stick with the content, and I'll come back to questions. So what does it really come down to? Why do people, and if you can apply it to your own situation or a fellow business owner that you know, that's really helpful. So if you can think of someone who like made the jump, they started working for themselves. Maybe they're a hairdresser, maybe they're a masseuse, maybe they're anyone you know in your life. If your business hasn't taken off to that point, if you can think of someone where you can see this in your life, it's really helpful. They jumped in, they went for it, and boom, within so many months, they were at a place where they've remained. Maybe that's booked out and busy. Maybe that's a functioning business. Maybe it's kind of like a second job for themselves. That often happens with self-employed, right? They accidentally make a new job for themselves. Often with my construction guys, you're really keeping a team busy, but you're kind of struggling on that line to keep them busy, because you're, which is very admirable that you're sticking with paying them, right? And not wanting them to not have income. But wherever that level is, people get there pretty quickly and then they stay there. So what I've noticed on the financial level as well, people tend to replace their net income that they've been accustomed to. So like if you really look at what someone was taking home previously, and then what they're taking home now after expenses, like what they're actually taking home personally, the situation often remains the same. Unless, again, there's been some real personal work, because the common denominator here is the person, right? Who's hasn't necessarily changed, is just changing what they're doing. Now, so what this comes down to is what I have called a filter. And basically, if you think about, like, it took me a long time to believe this, because I'm a technically trained person, right? I have an MBA. I worked with businesses. I help people make business plans. I did all sorts of accounting and tax consulting and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it didn't necessarily make a difference to people's ultimate outcomes. So that's where I really saw that, like, whatever people believed about the world actually seemed to really matter. Like, it was really playing out in whatever they were doing, right? They'd go back to they'd have the same amount of money. And if money wasn't a problem for someone, because some people have problems with money and some people don't, right? So if money wasn't a problem for someone, well, okay, they start their business, but they'll have the same problem they had working, right? Like it just, things just kind of stay the same when you really just focus on moving things around physically. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that, like, ultimately the beliefs that someone has really matter. So, like, what do you believe about the world? Like, you know, those things that you are always saying to people, like those little sayings that we say about what we think and the way things are, like really noticing those things because they are true, right? Like, they're cliches because they're true, and they're true because we accept them as true ultimately. So if you think about it, like, if you're religious, there's all different types of religious ways to look at the world. So, but some of those can often be that, like, this is kind of a mistake. Everything is about what comes after we die. And depending, like, we never know what's going on inside of someone. Only we know what's going on, right? Like, only we can personally know what's going on inside of us. But obviously there's a tendency in these religious models to think that the world is and I grew up in Baptist, which is why I can speak to that one. If you believe that the world is just kind of going to shit, you know, then obviously your experience might be kind of that it's going to shit. And like, so then it would make sense. So I have a little exercise for you to do, but let me just go through a few others. So, like, if you're atheist and you don't believe in anything, you just believe that this was all total coincidence, then there's also then you're likely to be like to not believe that anything I'm saying matters, right? This is just hogwash beliefs. Like, what? Like, you know, it can be a lot easier for a religious person, with someone with a religious background, to hear what I'm saying, maybe than an atheist person, right? Because then it's like, well, nothing is, all there is what we can see and feel. But science is actually where I'm a huge science buff and history buff, on top of business. And so that's where a lot of my beliefs around this very phenomena that I experienced with business owners has come from, because scientifically we are proving that there's so much about our beliefs about the world and weakness in the scientific model, right? Such as that matter exists, right? They've now proved matter is nothing, and that matter changes based on human consciousness. There's all sorts of stuff right down that avenue that makes things like expectations, beliefs, like, we are constantly thinking. We, as a society, particularly Western society, have really not acknowledged this common denominator of all of our experience, right? Which is that we're always thinking shit in our head. And that's a huge part of our experience. And that's how we form these thoughts and beliefs and statements, things we say. And so, of course, it would make sense that that's something that's hugely impacting how things are going for us financially and in a business, right? Like, the more you think about it, I think the more it really makes sense. And especially if you can think about other people, because it's always easier to see stuff in other people than in ourselves. So starting a business is about providing value. I'll talk about changing a relationship with challenges and failure last. But when it comes to starting a business, there's this common mentality that, like, we got to work so hard. And I don't believe that necessarily serves anyone. Like I said, I think that that can be a mistake, a mistaken identity, a fad, because the truth is starting a business is when you provide value. And starting a business can happen when you have a conversation with someone and say, yeah, I'll do that for you. Deal. Be there tomorrow, $300. Yes, you can make the checkout to blah, blah, blah. Done. That's a business. That's how a business can start, right? So this really doesn't need to be complicated. A lot of people feel like the internet brings on this complexity, but it doesn't have to. It's all in how you're thinking about it, right? So I encourage you to be very weary of that sort of glorifying that sort of super hard work and that it's got to be so hard. And I mean, I was there. I did that. I put in my time. Don't worry. But I don't necessarily attribute that to the end game. I attribute. I'll get there in a second. So one quick exercise to kind of bring this together to give you a way to apply it. And again, this isn't necessarily going to seem business related. It's going to seem very personal related. Is to really look at, well, what is my filter that I'm looking at life through? And a good way to identify that is to think, what are my first 3 memories? And as you think about that, which is probably something you need to take some time to do. If you think about well, what are my first 3 memories? And you kind of have to let them pop up. And it doesn't have to be the exact first 3. You don't have to but the first 3 from when you were younger that pop up. And if you kind of write each one down, a little phrase, and then you think about, okay, well, what is the emotion that I feel after thinking of that experience? And if you write down the emotion of your first 3 experiences, they are probably the same emotion. And that is probably a filter. So then what you can do is look at, and this exercise will be we'll put it under today's challenge. Then if you look at, okay, what are my current struggles in business or finances? And you really look at what's my resentment around this? So what do I resent? What am I upset about? What is the struggle? If you say define your top 3, write them down. And then, this is the key, how does that struggle make perfect sense and totally prove that your filter is correct about the world? And it's kind of the thing that you have to do to really see it. But it can be really, really powerful. The other thing is just looking at what your current struggle is right now and asking a bunch of questions around it to really decide, is it real? Is my current biggest struggle real? It either isn't real or it is real. Sometimes they are real, sometimes they aren't. And to then kind of dissect it from there. So I'll have some more questions in there going over this, but the point is that it's a very introspective process to dissect really where you stand personally. And what I've found is that that's the fastest way to make changes in your finances in a business. So now we'll kind of get more into technicalities. But my point is I don't recommend doing depending on where you are, if you're at a point where you're flying to your plateau, then you might get a lot of momentum in taking action. But most people, most of the time, don't, without doing more work somehow, right? Or they'll actually move themselves backwards, go back to a job, have some big disappointments, that type of thing. So I would be curious about personal growth while you're trying to change a financial situation or start a business. So that what I cover next will work. So when it comes to creating a plan based on what we covered about the sales, about the online world, what I recommend is, updating a plan based on what's the most important thing to happen right now in your business. If you're just getting started, that's sales. You need to get sales. All of the reasons why you should do other things before getting sales are going to be kind of BS. Sure, sit down and do them if you want, but get them done and have your focus be on sales. Second thing is, if you already have a business going, so that applies. Like if you're trying to start something on the side, it's probably going to be sales if making money is the most important thing. If you're trying to start something around a passion, or you're trying to, it all depends on the specifics. So you're welcome to ask questions and put in your specific if you're trying to decide on a plan. But when you think about a plan, you want to choose the most important thing to focus on, often sales, but often, like let's say you're trying to expand a business, scale a business, you're already booked out. Well, then you may need to focus on systematizing your business to grow and deciding which way you're going to grow. But if you just focus on building a habit around the one area of focus, that will move you forward. So focus on like spending a certain amount of time every day on that one thing. I found habits to be the way to go. You identify and narrow down what the core task is that's going to move the business forward, and then you make that a habit. Personally, I have not found, I'll stay away from everything else. We'll keep it simple because that's enough to work. So like, let's say you're building a business and you want to do something online and you're not sure what it is, but you know that you want to like build an audience or you want to make content. Well, then make content every day. Like you don't need, in the online world, there are many ways to make money once you build an audience. So just focus on putting content out there if that's what you want to do. If you have a local business, but you know that you have a unique process or something you want to teach, then by all means, start putting that content out there. Choose one platform. Like I said, you can refer back to the social media training, but use one outlet and use it correctly and create whatever it is you want to create, videos or trainings or whatever, and just put them on that one outlet and use it correctly. So you would want to learn how to use whatever platform you're going to use. You'd want to learn how to use it correctly. But most importantly, you want to set a habit up for actually creating the content and putting it out there. So that can move a lot forward. So when it comes to creating a plan, again, it's keeping it really simple and just focusing on what the most important area of your business is: sales, building an audience online, or scaling a business. Those are probably going to be the main three. And then just dedicate a set amount of time, build a habit around it every day. Okay, so that's pretty much all for finalizing and implementing a plan. Basically, it's, you want to continue doing work on whatever you believe about the world, that softer side of experience, continuing to learn and follow your interests, because here's the thing, I haven't met, even though a lot of people want more money and that's why they're starting a business, really, is it really about the money, or is it because who you think you will be when you have the money? Because I guarantee it's probably the latter, right? Like it's probably not actually that you want money. It's probably that you think money will give you X, Y, Z. So if you focus on what it is you're really wanting, then when you plan around that and focus on achieving that, I can assure you the money works itself out better. If money is your issue, like if you have an issue with money, if you've had an issue with money, don't focus on the money. That I can tell you from personal experience. And it's very counter to what a lot of people will say, right? And again, I don't mean don't look at your money. Totally always be looking at your money, keeping it organized and that sort of thing. So let's see, let's go over some questions here. And also I need to give you guys, so the other thing about implementing, obviously having what I've found to be most helpful in growing my business was having accountability. So being with a group where I talk about my situation, talk about what I'm doing, and then say what I'm going to do for the next week, that has made the biggest difference in my business. Because it gives you a way to process, like, you know, if anyone's ever been a part of any sort of grief processing, drugs or alcohol groups, any sort of self-help groups, they all actually use the same format. And it involves basically an accountability structure. And when you look at like business coaching programs, that's essentially what they are. So the course that I'm doing based on these topics that we've covered, but based on actually implementing your plan, is a 7-week course. It's starting next week. There'll be 12 people. A few people have already signed up, and you actually get access to all of my courses. So all of my e-courses and spreadsheet templates, you get access to them all, and plus this 7-week course. So I'm just grabbing the link. And I'll put that in there, and then I'll take your questions. So go ahead and put in your questions, or if you were wanting to apply any of what we covered, put in your details. I'd love to share my thoughts. So that's going to be the main structure. I will be adding to each week of the content we covered in this paid course. I will, of course, add to each week's content. And so we'll be applying that. And so you can get specific help applying it, but it will be set up as a group structure where each person shares what they're working on, and it'll be live in Zoom. And it's really an implementation group so that you can, you know, commit to doing certain things and then kind of debriefing and processing how you're applying everything, and of course get my input as well. So I will come back here. Let's see. Bo, haven't watched video 2 yet, but what's the best structure creating random business under? Yeah, so again, you gotta really watch it because I can't re-say an hour of content. Like, so people love to ask that question, and I'll just tell you that you can ask the question repeatedly all you want, but it's not gonna make the situation simpler. Like I can't change reality. It is what it is. And yeah, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Like those things work themselves out. Like choosing you found me, if you think I make things simple, which many people do, you know, plus I think I answered it, right? I mean, it depends on some, like you really got to watch that video. And you've got to watch the parts of it that you probably haven't wanted to watch. Like you got to actually understand that you're not going to get an answer the way you want the answer, because that's not the way the industry is. Just like engineering, right? If you try to and I don't know what industry you are, it'd be funny if you're an engineer, but you can't just make things simpler than they are. The fact that I talk about this stuff and simplify all of legal small business choice in the matter of 30, 40 minutes would horrify, business professionals in the industry. Just absolutely horrify them. So keep that in mind. It's just the way it is. Bubbles says pyramid schemes. I hate those. Yes, I know, they're horrible. Gaming, very cool, very cool. So you're making gaming, or were you YouTube, Bubble? I believe you were YouTube. So you're doing a gaming channel. Cool. Robert, if you like what you'll do, you'll never work a day in your life. Yes, very true. Beautiful quote. Love it. JJ, if I created my company on January 1, do I still qualify for small business COVID grants? Well, there's no real grants. Let's just back up with that word. There's the $10,000 grant, as everyone was calling it, but that's not what it is. As I explained in that video, I have a whole series of videos for COVID stuff. So that's, you're applying for a loan, disaster relief loan. If you don't qualify for the disaster relief loan, then you may get a grant. It depends on your situation, how much that grant is for. They were up to $10,000. People have stated that it's changed. You can no longer check the advance. It's not the SBA's fault, so let's just hold off on crucifying the SBA. The SBA works for our government, and they implement what the government tells them to. So let's not talk about ridiculous things like suing the SBA and all the crazy comments I've gotten. Anyways, you can apply to the PPP. And yeah, you're probably not going to deal with the disaster relief. I would leave that alone. If you want to apply for the grant, I mean, go ahead and try. If you're not approved for the loan, then they might give you a grant. No, I don't know that you'll qualify with January, since you started January 1st. For the PPP, you will. It will be your average net. You don't get to make money off these programs. You get to replace the income you lost. So as I cover in those videos, going over everything about the COVID program, you would be, it's the average of January and February, your net income if you started in January. So check those out. Let's see. DK, right now, not nowadays. DK. My focus is on sales. I'm tweaking my products to help increase sales. I keep seeing what I did wrong the first time. It's because working for other people is bull shit, I think you're saying there. I don't know what that's in response to, but I probably agree. Right now, not nowadays, yes. I got the links, thanks. Cool, Craig. Hi, Ramon. Hello, Bo, what's the best industry with low overhead and simple exit strategies? I was watching Shark Tank and one investor said they'll only create businesses to sell them. Yeah, so I'd love to talk about this, and I do talk about this in the day 2 and 3 trainings, but I'll talk about it again for sure. So venture capital is only interested in making billions of dollars. So you can go to Shark Tank, and they talk about this, right? You can go with a good idea, and they don't care at all about it. So here's a thank you. This is a great question because I really want to clarify what I'm about. So the way I see it, the people who are running our world are the only people who could really like do it. Like they're dying off. The corporate structure, the focus on making billions of dollars for providing very little value. Now notice how sometimes on Shark Tank, like there was the woman investor and she I don't watch it a lot, but she saw one business and she was like, that's doing something really good. Okay, I'll go in with her. And it was something in hospitals and she helped them out. Here's the thing. This concept of only caring, if that worked, Bo, if it worked to go, I'm going to find the best industry. If it worked, everyone would do it. Those investors are hungry, and they get ripped off. They lose money because they're so hungry for. Have you heard of Theranos and seen that girl DeVoe, our education secretary? All these people spent hundreds of millions of dollars to her because she sold them. So what I believe is it's time for things to change, and it's time for small business owners to become outrageously more powerful and influential. That is going to happen by not playing their game. That's going to happen by creating value. That's going to happen because you see a way to do things better. You see a need and you solve that need, and you understand that by design, the system rewards those who creates value, because our system does reward those who create value. Inside of that filter of our reality determines if we'll ever see that benefit or not, right? Because a lot of people can get a lot of money and have very little to show for it, even become poorer and poorer and poorer, really. And debt is an incredible, can be an incredibly negative experience. I mean, making more and more money and losing more and more money can be an incredibly stressful experience. And that's the experience of a lot of people at the top of our societies. So it's really important to understand, because a lot of people start a business and they're like, oh yeah, I wanna think about my exit strategy. I'm gonna sell this business. Let me tell you something. That's a good way to fail. You will. Oh, and I got to come back to failure. Great. So going into a business to sell it means that no one is going to buy it if you're going in to sell it. People buy businesses because not for a good idea. Like, they don't care about an idea. Investors will fund a team with a lousy idea and a good team over a good idea and a half team, because they know that a good team is going to be able to find the right problem and eventually solve it, even if it's not the original product. But good ideas are worth nothing, right? Because you got to bring it to life. And that's that missing part that this training was all about, right? It's the missing piece, because people can't make that happen. The venture capital companies, they can't make that happen, right? Like, they can't figure that out either. And if you're looking at the best industry, it doesn't work that way, right? Because it's all about you, because you're the common denominator, like, you are personally the common denominator. And it's your experience, and you have all this shit going on in your experience that we never talk about. And that's where your keys are. Like, that's where the key is. That's where the right industry is. That's where you find the industry. It's like, the thing that lights you up is the industry that you will work at all the time. And as Robert said, I believe, you're not working. Like, you've got to find that, because now maybe you're the type of person, like I said, it's really hard. Like, we see companies that might look like they're doing good, but really the person is financially bankrupt all the time. So it's like, you can't even gauge things by the outside, by external success, to know what someone is really experiencing financially and from a success standpoint. Like, I would argue, being that I've worked with so many people on that back end, I mean, that's why I'm saying this. Like, that's what I've seen, is that you never really know what's going. Someone can look like they're doing great, and people don't go around telling you that, like, they're actually hemorrhaging money and they're petrified. They've been struggling for years, or they've been trying different, like they don't tell you that part, right? Like, they show you, like, they want to build a reputation. They don't want to, like, see it that way. Even sometimes people don't even want to see it that way, right? Because they've been doing so much work. They want it to be changing. They want it to be, and so they would never even. So my point is, you never really know what's going on, right? Best industries with low overhead. So that's such a great question. And when I see that question, these are all the things I think about, right? Because The reason venture capital is going to, great. The reason venture capital only care about businesses that they're going to sell is because they want to make billions of dollars. And they're not talking about starting a business, right? They're talking about funding a business. So they're only going to choose people where the product serves a huge portion of the population. It's typically going to be like venture capital, like that show is more for the entertainment value and the fact that I think that venture capitalists do realize that like things are changing in the world. Like, I think that they kind of know, like I said, like that girl seeing that opportunity and being like, no, I've got to get in on this. I've got to help her do that because it's just the right thing to do. Right. So yeah, so you sent me on a rant, but I don't believe you can really look at it that way because so much of it depends on your own expertise, your own contacts, your own insight, your own knowledge, your experience, that when you're actually the owner starting the business, you really can't look for the best industry type of thing because it's not where my focus is. So that's why venture capital companies focus on technology companies. That's why all the investment money focuses on this. Why Facebook is $1 billion company, because it does not cost anything to have one more user. So that's why there's so much potential in tech, is because it's very simple. They talk about it like it's all complicated. It's not. It's very simple. It's that it doesn't cost anything to have another user. So when you have solutions like that don't cost anything to have another user, there's so much potential. Now, accounting and tax industry, that's one that is also actually seen as a pretty good industry investment-wise. Like when it comes to selling small businesses, those are one of the small business that is actually sold often because the client base is loyal because they need this yearly thing. But generally smaller businesses, service businesses, various products are they're less interested. Now, I think that because that's the leading cause right now, that there's a ton of potential that everyone is missing because everyone is playing that game. And that game is not, that game caters to a few people, relatively a few people with a lot of money, and them saying, we want to play the game in a way where we make a ton of money for doing very little. That's the game that they're playing. And I think that there's a ton of potential, and I think there's a ton of evidence for this, that actually, if you play the game based on your personal interests, your personal experience, your expertise, what you see that you can create value in the world, if you focus on value and social change, environmental change, changing the structure of how we live through business, if you focus on those things that so many people want to focus on, actually, because that's what people want that. I find it crazy that so many companies are still using throwaway shit as packaging. People don't want that. All a company selling something has to do is go environmentally, no trash, okay? And you will gain loyal customers. So you really, if you look at opportunity, there's so much opportunity right now, but everyone is trying to follow the regular instruction. And so they're not seeing, hey, look, people want stuff. There are so many people right now with money to spend, big money to spend. Business is not complicated. It's just giving them something they want. And investors, the reason investors investors just, they're not spending that much time on this. I mean, if you think about the Shark Tank, right? Like that's their one thing. Like they're actually not spending that much time on this. They have a lot of money. And so they're just looking for the very easiest way. And yes, they use jargon and they think, no one's really, it's just a world that they've kind of created that they're in. And I mean, think about the attitude they have on that show. I can't even watch that show because the fact that they don't do more education and the way the power, like it's just disturbing to me. Whereas these people that are coming there are like doing hard work, have great ideas. And, there are some good things in the show, so I won't say that, but obviously you can tell I have a big different perspective. So thanks for saying the rant is great. That's good. Yes. And, I know the textbook. I teach the textbooks. So that's why, that's where my perspective has come from, is just working with people, everything coming together cumulatively to see that there's so much potential right now. Like this internet is different. And DK says, I'm going to tax school this September. Super cool. I'll be in touch when I set up my online tax prep company. Cool. Yeah. I have on my site now, I have for, I'm looking at doing CE training. So you have to get continuing education if you're going to be an EA agent, if you're going to file business returns. What school are you going to? But if you are going to be licensed and do business returns, which you have to be licensed to do business returns, then definitely check out my continuing education program. You can sign up here and I'll let you know. I have not started it yet, but I have the opt-in up. So people who are accounting and tax professionals, because I know I have a lot of you guys, I'm doing CE training. I'll be starting that on a monthly basis so that you're getting your CE credit, but it's not worthless training because that's what CE is. It's very expensive and it's absolutely worthless. And this is training that's specifically for self-employed tax and accounting, like bookkeeping or tax professionals. And it's also helping you. So it's my courses for small businesses, but tailored for you guys as professionals. So going deeper, and the templates go deeper and geared towards you helping clients. That's great. I've done that one. So I did that at one point, even though long story, but yeah, the great program. Alessandra Mandrick. I hope I didn't say that wrong. Hi, Amanda. We're doing IT consulting, web application, and mobile development. I'm thinking about joining your workshop. Are there any requirements to join? No. As far as requirements, let's see. You can see the link. You should be able to see the link, whatever platform you're on. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, I put the link in up a little bit. So all of my courses are geared towards small business owners. Sounds like you would, a consulting is a great type of business. That's perfect. Yeah, it's just if you want to be, if you want help implementing, the only type of prerequisite or requirement, there's no requirement except that you want to participate in this type of program to develop your business. And definitely you may want to check out the trainings I covered in day 1 through 7. So this is day 7. And you can sign up for the free training using the link at the top when I started. If you just scroll up in chat, you'll see it was one of the first, or scroll down depending on which platform you're on. You can sign up for the free training if you're not already signed up for that and go through that just to have that as a base. That is going to be part of the basis of the course for the 7 weeks. We'll be going through each day per week in more depth. I'll be adding additional trainings and you'll be applying it and just implementing based on wherever you're at and sharing what you're going to commit to for the next week. So it's just a matter of wanting to have that type of support structure and participate. Like I explained, I don't know if you were here, if you didn't hear all of this, today's training, you may want to watch it. I just talked about how, that was the type of training that I found most effective. And then of course you'd also be able to get my input on where you're at and what you're working on in your business. But I found it to be really helpful to have a group who was at a similar stage as me, and to be sharing and making my own commitments and talking out loud to a group of other people that are in the same position about what I'm going to work on and what I'm going to have finished for the next week. I found that to be one of the most helpful things. I'm still doing that now. And that's really that's I found to be the most helpful thing. I mean, I have an MBA. I work with business owners. I've worked with all sorts of business owners. But that structure, that's why I set this program up that way, because I just found it to be the most helpful thing. Talking out loud about what you're going to work on just helps you really narrow it in. And then, of course, you have my input, but you also get to listen to me giving other people input. And sometimes we learn better from other people as well. And like I said, there'll be additional training each week on each of the days I've covered in this free training. Let's see. Yes. Let's see. How many years in an industry is appropriate to consider oneself a consultant? Consulting, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily about years in the industry. You're welcome. Thanks for asking. I don't think it's necessarily about years in the industry. It's about, do you have something to offer someone? Are you able to help people? Anyone can call themselves a consultant. It's up to someone who's looking to that person for information to verify that they have, what they need. Which, I think that you can really tell more by talking to people. I've always found that. I have all sorts of credentials. Rarely do people ask me about those credentials, right? They hear my content and they say, oh, I know that you can answer this. Like you're saying it pretty different than I've heard other people say it. It makes sense to me. I believe you. You don't seem like you're lying. So much of our ability to judge people is on a deeper level. So I genuinely feel that. I feel that way about people I've chosen to work with. Like, I've always continued kind of getting business knowledge. I learned the online world. My MBA, when I did an MBA, it did not cover the online world. Nowadays, I think they are changing that. But of course, I have an administration focus. It was not focused on online. So I had to learn the online world. And I did thoroughly learn the online world by doing lots of trainings. That's how I learning from people. So, and it's really based on do I believe that person, and does that person have some experience I can learn from? And that's something that we really, on a gut level, I think it's really good, again, just like day one, to check in about, do you really need this? Because there's a lot of sales stuff that happens online. And that's, that's a whole other thing. Just like the pyramid schemes, they kind of tailor on people's desires to start a business. So anyways, that's all. Let me see. Any other questions? DK, my publishing company is a passion project. The tax prep company will be the boring business that remains steady. Well, that's something I would have a talk about. I'd go for the passion project and just go for it. Get a job. Getting a job doing taxes is a hell of a lot easier than starting a tax business. Just throwing it out there. Okay, guys. Well, that's all. I'm doing another. Oh, the last thing I didn't talk about was the failure and challenge. So, it's true. Like how we look at, I mean, it's generic because it's true. How we look at a failure impacts how quickly we move through it. When something goes wrong, the faster we can say, okay, what am I learning from this? Like, what do I learn from this? And get really clear, like, why did I know that this was going to turn out this way? That's a big one. Why did I really know? What what sign did I actually ignore where I knew that this was going to turn out this way? Sometimes it's easy. It's like, yeah, didn't really want to do this. Really, I was like petrified. I like didn't really want to do this thing, but I was making myself do it, or and then there's way more subtle situations. But being able to sit down and look at yourself, that inner world, right, that we were talking about throughout this training, and to really ask yourself, like, why did this happen? What can I learn from it? Who was I being? How did I know? Did I know that this was going to happen? Where can I find evidence that I knew that this was going to happen? Because typically we do have a knowing, and we can just like look at our emotional states throughout the process as well, because I find that that's very telling too. So again, it's just a matter of allowing extra time to really focus on who we are as an individual. I mean, I've worked with a lot of business owners who have challenges with their workers, for kind of successful companies that hit their blocks with their employees, where the owner thinks the employees are the problem. And it's rarely the case. I've never had the experience where it was actually the employees. It's really kind of just the drama that people create. Like, we have to be really careful, right? Because it can, especially in a challenge or failure, it can feel like it's happening to us. And so a lot of the process that I do in one-on-one coaching is to help people really look at how that fits a narrative, and how did that filter I was talking about, and how, like, what actions can they take differently? Actual actions can be taken differently right now to not allow that to affect you. It's like you can play out kind of the natural route, which is, okay, I've experienced a challenge or a failure. If I was going to let that, the natural course would be what? What would my natural reaction to this challenge or failure be? And like play the tape out. And then like the literal actual things that you will do because of that. Like, I went live on a live stream and like it was horrible, and I was alone. What would I do? Never do it again. That's one, right? Like, I could play out one path. I would never do it again. That's what I would do. I would not do it again. I might change my business model. I'm like, you could just play out the tape of what you think would happen, and then play out the opposite. Okay, well, what if I did the opposite of each one of those things? And play that tape out, and what do you think will happen? And so that's a way to really look at failure and challenge as regenerative. In other words, that from the failure itself, you can actually create a bigger business, you can get to your end goal faster because of that thing having occurred. So anyways, okay, well, we're at an hour, so it's time to end this. You're welcome, DK. Priceless, well said. Thanks, Greg, I believe. Another Greg. Nice to see you here. Sorry for the late question. When you file for an SBA loan, you make the bank fill out a disclosure form. I am not sure about that. SBA loan for you make the. There's all sorts of paperwork they have you fill out. That's for sure. Thanks, Greg. So generally, I don't worry about ideas getting swiped, right? In all of this context, it's very common. People could steal my courses, it's really, but again, what is important to remember is that it's not the idea. The reason the idea is worthless is because most people can't do anything with ideas. So do look around. You might, there are technical steps, of course. I'll definitely be covering those in the course, stuff like that. When you have actual, like all the technical steps that come up for people in this 7-week course, I'll be covering all of that. So you have access to all of my courses, which go through everything. I cover trademarks. I think it's forming, choosing the best type of business to form goes through all of that. All of my courses basically cover all the technicalities, and you get access to all of those courses in the Start Your Business live course, which we're starting on Monday, July 20th, and then it's weekly meetings into September. So yeah, and then if there's a specific issue like that that comes up, I'll of course add steps about that and address that too. So you would get all of that. It really is it's a killer deal, and it'll be a lot of fun. It's a fun way to move forward if you're starting a business. So, okay, let me know if you have any questions. And otherwise, I'm going live on Friday again for a great topic that I talked about in the email, and I don't remember at the moment. But do come check it out. It was on all of this stuff and going a bit deeper into implementation, I believe. Maybe budgeting. I think budgeting and financial stuff as well. So anyways, but bring your questions at the end. And if you're new, again, use the link to join in and you can get access to all the recordings. And otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for coming. Thanks for asking questions. Bye.